So, welcome back. It's Thursday, October 15th, and yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day. So, today we're going to talk a little bit more about our process for planning the modern virtual ku'i that we're creating for our practice purposes. We'll talk more about the role of Nakani. We would like to have a discussion and a check-in with you all about the naming ceremony portion of our ku'i. And since yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day, we'll be celebrating all week, and we'd like to show a video called Angoon 100 Years Later, followed by a second video called Hashagoon.
Well, before
Oh,
you got first.
okay, yeah, Kwati.
Uh,
So we'll do Hashagoon first. Um, so before we get rolling on the role of Nakani, were there any questions or comments from anybody? I know everybody's settling in from into their work breaks, still signing in, so I'm pushing buttons, giving you guys time to think.
we'll take questions as we go and comments.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So a quick check-in about our naming ceremony. Shirley and I ordered the books that Edna recommended to us when she visited our class, and we read a little bit about the naming ceremony. So the naming takes place in a ku'ik among the members of the hosting clan. So in this case, for our practice ku'ik, it'll be hosted by the Ravens. And the person who volunteered to receive a name for our practice is Eagle Clan. So we would basically be requesting an exception to the rule that the naming takes place amongst the hosting clan. Shaksani Keek and I would like to do a little bit more discussion and research to see if this rule is firm. If it is, and if it would be too out of the ordinary to have a naming ceremony for the Eagles when it's a Raven hosted clique, then we can still do it, but we'll host a separate naming ceremony for our practice outside of the clique.
It's really common uh, to do it without a party. I received two names, and it was an agreement between the chiefs to do it. I received one name at the party, one name without a party. So it can be done, and it's just as important to do it either way. It works, and I think the only real requirement is that it be done publicly. So, we'll work on that. And the confusion that I have is if the Ravens are hosting the party and the names to be given out is in the guest, and I don't know if we can cross over to do that. So just bear with us. We'll work it out.
Hello,
Before, yeah.
I just wondering maybe we just might consider having a naming ceremony before the ku'ich. Might be an idea.
Yeah, I'll find out a little more. Thanks for the idea. Have it a little more, and then it was I think you're right, because it is a time when new names can be introduced at the party. You bring them out and say, this person received a new name and we want to introduce them. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. Thank you, Chief.
Awesome. Anybody else have thoughts or experiences they want to share? Okay. And Shirley, we also mentioned that we want to talk about the role of Khan. It's 10 minutes after, so do you want to talk about that before we watch the
Yeah.
video?
Yeah, we want to make sure we show everything real fun. Are there any more comments or questions? If not, we'll go into, we wanted to do a celebration of the indigenous. I think we should have a celebration every week, but there was one yesterday and different towns had different activities. I don't know if there was any here outside of the heritage. But for this class, we wanted to remind you that we are here and we were here first. So I think it was, it's a good idea. And the plan that we had for today is to remind you, and I'm sure you already know about Angoon. And Angoon, the film you're going to see is called Angoon 100 Years Later. But that was quite a few years ago. And finally, they're going to, I think they already either had the apology from the Navy or they're going to on the 26th. I'm confused about that because I hear two different things. But I wanted to also, I thought it was a good time for you to have an understanding about the deer dancer. And I'm pretty sure you either heard about them or seen one or know somebody that has a. I heard recently that there was some guy going around saying, I'm a deer dancer, announcing real loud. That's exactly the opposite personality that they use. They were looking for a deer dancer. The person apparently was picked if because of their personality being a very quiet, uh, easygoing, easy to talk to, easy to find and be available person. And as you know, the deer in the wild is not aggressive and does not attack in the ways that we know about. So it's just someone that a chief, and this is something that's important, is that a chief, if they're wealthy enough uh, to have a deer dancer, could select someone to be a deer dancer. And they have to go through a special ceremony. The deer dancer selected could be a man or a woman. And the example will show you from the Haynes dance group is a woman from the Kagwan time. And they have to go through quite a difficult ceremony to be selected to be trained as a deer dancer. So they they have to fast for 5 days. And the things that I've heard about fasting among the Tlinkits, the usual amount of time for a lot of things was 5 days for fasting. They they seem to have that kind of a limit that they use. So the person is isolated from everyone except a caregiver. And it might be caregivers that they take turns taking, because the person has to be cared for 5 days, day and night.
Yeah.
Uh, they have during the time that they're fasting, they are not allowed to touch anybody or even themselves. And I was talking to someone, I think it was at the University of Washington Museum. They had this beautiful silver teardrop shaped silver with a design on it, and it doesn't have holes in it or anything to pin it with, or and they couldn't figure out it wasn't money, it wasn't jewelry, but it was a beautiful carved silver piece. And I heard that uh, a rock could be used in that place, but if this teardrop shaped silver is provided to the deer that's being trained, can use it for scratching. He
Oh.
also scratches arm or scratches whatever his back or his, her anything on her body has to use that. And the piece that was on display at the university in Seattle was such a beautiful place, and they said piece, and they said it was something they found and they couldn't figure out. They realized it wasn't jewelry, and I saw it and I knew right away what it was because of the descriptions I had from talking to my dad about the training that they had. And that's only a small part of the preparation they had to be a deer dancer. And the dancer can only perform on command from its his or her owner. They cannot dance at any other time. So it's a very important position in the tribe to be one and to have one. And there can be more than one peace dancers in the tribe or in the clan. So what I wanted to do is to show you, and this is a female deer dancer, uh, what it looks like, and the fact that the dance she's doing is to show that there is no peace, and there's a narrator that gives you good description of what was happening. So I'll not go any further on that. Well, look at the dancer, and then because I can't remember from the Angun 100 years later if they showed a close up of the peace dancer, but they did have one. So after we finish looking at the peace dancer from Haynes, then we'll switch over to the Angun story.
Okay, awesome. So I have Hashagun up. Should I hit play?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ah, hey, hey, yeah. Ah, hey,
It is hard for our Tlingit to explain to others what we mean by Ha Shagun. Ha Shagun, it is what we are now, what we have been since the beginning, and everything that our children must become. Ha Shagun, that is the way it is with us. My name is Austin Hammond. I am a Tlingit Indian. Having been given the name Donawak, I am a spokesman for my people, the Tlikwagadi clan of the Tlingit Nation. Our ancestral home is Tlkut, an area known now as Chilkoot Lake and Chilkoot River. This is not my story. It is the story of what concerns our people today as we live in Alaska. Listen and remember, young people of my tribe, you with us now and you still to come. I was 9 years old the first time I went to Chilkoot to be with my grandfathers. One's name was Jim David, Ushkekai Dagwich. The other was called Joe Whiskers, Kuwanagas. It was at Chilkoot that they taught me things about our Tlingit ways. My grandfather said, the time will come when these things we tell you will need to be heard again. Somehow they knew the time was coming when the Tlingit culture would be threatened, and I would have to be the one to speak out for my people and for our land, to speak out for Chilkoot.
There's I think this is quite a long film too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that you said before?
The Peace Dancer.
Oh,
Yeah, this is the beginning of Hashagun,
yeah.
and it's quite long, about a half hour or so.
Oh,
We
okay.
don't have time for, although it has a lot of information. I just want
Yeah.
to show that Peace Dancer at the end of the film.
Ah, I see. Okay.
There's our feelings for the land.
I'm gonna find it. 1 second.
Grandchildren. Salmon for our subsistence in this river, a heritage denied to us that is rightful.
Do you think this sounds like the right song? I
I
see.
think you're talking about the peace dancer.
Okay.
Symbolically dipping with a cup, life-giving spring water. The arms will remain folded. For today our peace is not whole, our request not fulfilled.
This seems right.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I'll go to the beginning of this section. Sorry, guys.
Cry of the Tlingit. His voice wavers, showing fear, yet determination.
A little before this.
No, I think it's later.
Okay. This is at the 21-minute mark, so I'll just go a little bit farther.
This song was composed long ago for the peace ceremony. It is sung to the Kowakan, the deer, the peacemaker. The dance begins with an aggressive gesture, and then a change in the tempo of the song and of the dance indicates a change in feelings and is symbolic of our expectation of peace. The clans are dancing the sacred peace ceremony by a people that the Kwakari clan have chosen a woman of the Kagwantan clan to symbolize the deer. Traditionally, the Ruakan is a person of great calm and presence. In the Ruakan's conduct during the ceremony lay the fate of the community, whether there would be hostility or peace. There can be no angry words or gestures. During the ceremony, she will not hold any sharp objects. So symbolically, she cannot cut her family's life. Two attendants, Hokan Dakao, surround and protect the Hokan. We are making only 4 requests as conditions for peace. We ask that the peace rock or deer rock, Hokante'i, broken into pieces by road builders, be made whole, that the fishware be removed, that our sacred burial grounds be protected so never again will the bones of our ancestors lay scattered and disturbed. And we ask that we may lawfully catch salmon for our subsistence in this river, a heritage denied to us that is rightfully ours.
Even if he had died long ago, your raven, children of Kanachtedi, only your words will bring him back. When a person is dying, the spring water will be given to give breath again.
The arms of the Kowakan are now folded, not outstretched. Were peace to be made, her arms and the blanket would be open, and the others would dance by her, symbolically dipping with a cup life-giving spring water. The arms will remain folded. For today our peace is not whole, our request not fulfilled. If a just settlement is made, the peace ceremony will be completed.
What was that, Shirley?
We can go to the Angoon.
Okay. We had a question in the chat. Who was surrounding her and protecting her when the
She can invite other dancers. Usually that's done before she can have more than two people that surround her, usually same clan.
Okay.
She had one of the dancers dancing around her was Kicksadi. What was she? The Gulkhan?
Yeah, the woman in the middle was the peace dancer or the deer dancer.
Yeah, she was Kagwan Town. She was related to me, so I know her.
Mm.
Okay, so she was eagle and she had ravens dancing around her then.
No, same clan.
The there was a Kicksadi dancing around her though.
Oh,
It was a frog coming out of a hole.
Oh. I'll take a look at it after class. Thanks for bringing it up.
yeah. Good question.
All right, we have 30 minutes left. This one's 28 minutes long, so I'm going to hit play. And we'll watch the whole thing, right, Shirley?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Hundreds of years ago, the Deshitan Raven clan of the Tlingit Indians founded the village of Angoon on southeast Alaska's spectacular Admiralty Island. On October 24, 1982, the people of Angoon began a 3-day commemoration ceremony. The ceremony culminated on October 26th, the 100th anniversary of an event that still burns in the memory of this village, an event that marks the darkest hour in its history, but one from which these people have risen back. Memory has lived on all these 100 years, for it has been their tradition to recount the story lest it be forgotten. It is the tradition of the Tlinkits of southeast Alaska that the spoken word should carry history and culture, that their beautiful creations of wood and fiber should also represent their history and their lineage, and that these highly prized works of art be displayed as their history is recounted. Yes, it is the tradition of the Raven Beaver clan, the Dog Salmon clan, the Killer Whale, and the Bear, 4 major clans of this village, that the heartbreak of October 26, 1882, can only be set to rest with an event like this. A coming together of all the people whose roots are here, wherever they may live today. A sharing of grief, a sharing of joy, the dedication of physical monuments in the ancient manner, and a rededication of spirit. This village was destroyed 100 years ago, attacked by the United States Navy at a time when the highly evolved culture of these people was little understood by the newcomers, so intent to establish a foothold and tap the natural wealth that had sustained the Tlinkits for thousands of years. Whether the Angoon bombardment, as it has come to be known, was the result of simple misunderstanding between 2 cultures in collision, or whether it was more malicious in intent, is something historians and anthropologists may never fully set to rest. But the pain of that day 100 years ago, of that first winter with their shelter and food supply destroyed, of the years of rebuilding, has been resolved as the ancient Tlingit culture prescribed it must be, in a public event. You will see as this event unfolds not only the story behind the tragedy, but the story of an indomitable spirit and the culture that preserves it. You will see how that culture even today dictates a complex order of rights and obligations that make all the clans interdependent upon each other, These proceedings may appear deceptively simple to some, but to those who appreciate the details and the nuances, there is a wealth of meaning and emotion. So come with us now and discover the interesting twists this commemoration will take and what these teach us about this fascinating Tlingit culture, how it adapts to modern times, but how it sometimes bends the people back to traditional ways. For this is Angoon, 100 years later.
Great. The new GoDaddy.
Sorry, there's an ad. I never saw this before. 1 second. Skip through the ad, and then I'll put it back on. Okay, here we go. 1 sec.
The ceremony commemorating the 100th anniversary of the bombardment of Angoon began in the traditional Tlingit manner, with group dancing. In this first part, called Warming of Hands, clan leaders welcomed the assembled people, symbolically inviting them to warm their hands by the host's fire. One at a time, they come forward wearing ceremonial hats, robes or vests that display their clan emblems. Some of the artwork is new, demonstrating the adoption of modern techniques. Some of the pieces are 100 years old or more. They are passed on from one generation to the next, often at ceremonies like this. The more times a piece has been passed on or displayed at a ceremony, the greater its cultural and emotional value to the clan. These artifacts come to embody the people who wore them before and the events at which they were displayed. They are shown off rarely, usually only at ceremonies. Always, warming of hands involves dancing and fellowship, for the purpose is to bring the people together spiritually as well as physically. All the many clans of the Tlinkits fall into one of two major subdivisions of the entire Tlingit nation, the eagle and the raven. So it is said that the beaver comes under the raven, the dog salmon comes under the raven, while the killer whale and the bear come under the eagle. For traditional Tlinkits, society, and especially ceremonial life, are governed by a rich and complicated pattern of interactions between the two sides, the eagles and the ravens. For example, all marriages are between an eagle and a raven, never between members of the same side. Clan lineage is traced through the mother's family line rather than through the father's, as in European cultures. Thus, all the children belong to their mother's clan. From the mother's clan, the children inherit the right to use the clan's emblems, claim its history, and share its prestige and wealth. Besides their parents, the most important person in the children's life is their mother's brother. That's their maternal uncle. The uncle is the person most responsible for the children's education and development into mature members of their mother's clan. The uncles were stern taskmasters. For a traditional Tlingit, his clan is that of his mother, and he calls his ancestral clan homeland, the land of my uncles. One of Jay Hammond's last public appearances as governor of Alaska was at Angoon's commemoration ceremony. Tlinkits bestow ceremonial names upon their own people, and to non-Tlinkits they greatly respect. Ceremonial names are handed down from generation to generation. The names of great people might not be given again for several generations, until a person of appropriate stature and accomplishment is found. When a person has been honored with a name from the past, he assumes all the rights and obligations of the person who last held that name, including clan relationships. In terms of the ceremonial life of the clan, the contemporary person has become the deceased person who had that name. So in a manner of thinking, great leaders and loved ones are with the Tlinkits again. As we shall see later, this can be a source of comfort and strength to all.
And now you will witness the formal and traditional giving of name.
Here, Governor Hammond is officially adopted into the brown bear clan. His new name means you don't see a brown bear coming through the forest. When you first see him, he's already in front of you.
The name will now be placed on Governor Hammond, the Lingit name. Sikatusteja, 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 Sikatusteja. Thank you very much.
And as in all things Tlingit, the family must share in the occasion. In this case, a brand new family of clan brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and so on.
Today, however, has as well a sad side. Since the three-way celebration really marks the 100th anniversary of a historical event which no American can think back upon without some sense of shame. America, for example, conquered our so-called Wild West, but did so in a manner most now find abhorrent. The victims of one such occurrence we are commemorating here today. On October 26, 1882, the U.S. Navy, for whatever reason, misinformation, rumor, fear, cultural ignorance, bad communications, miscalculations, or who knows, to, quote, teach the natives a lesson, bombarded, burned, and destroyed this native village of Angoon. In the process, they willfully, according to reports, attempted to destroy the traditions of this native village. Along with all provisions and homes, with winter soon to arrive, this left an entire people to starve or die from the elements. And some, I understand, did.
This was Tlingit Ani, land of the Tlingit, the land over which they had enjoyed undisputed dominion for centuries. With the coming of the white men and their superior weapons, this was changing. When the first Europeans appeared on their shore in the 1700s, the Tlingits were respected and feared by the other native peoples along the entire North Pacific coast, from Alaska to California. They were the fiercest warriors, the most aggressive traders, and the shrewdest. The rich coastal environment and forest provided more than enough food to sustain them and allowed leisure time for art and a rich social life. Throughout southeast Alaska, each of the Tlingit tribes sought to be the wealthiest, the most powerful, the most artistic, and the noblest. Within each clan, great leaders emerged, rising according to their abilities and accomplishments. Their wealth and prestige brought honor to their clans. Lineage and ancestry was all important. Nobility and rank amongst the Tlingits was no less important in their world than among the royal families of Europe. High-caste Tlingits spoke their language with an eloquence equal to that, for example, of the English upper classes. By 1880, the fur seal population had already been wiped out to satisfy the markets of Europe, and now the Americans were establishing large commercial fishing operations, helping themselves to the salmon runs long considered the property of the clans. Whaling brought more white men, but that also meant more trade goods which the adaptable Tlingits valued, like clothing, metal tools, and guns. The Tlingits had never been conquered in the traditional sense. To their way of thinking, this was still their land. The foreigners presented as many benefits as threats. It was an uneasy peace, and the Tlingits' pride demanded they retain their traditional stature, as they were accustomed. The Northwest Trading Company ran a reduction plant at Killisnoo near Angoon, where they made herring and whale oil. Tithlain, a Tlingit medicine man born of noble blood, was employed by the company as helmsman on a whaling launch. On October 22nd, a harpoon gun exploded, killing Tithlain. It was Tlingit law that if a person was killed working for someone else, the employer must make a restitution payment. Such restitution payments had been made by the company in the past. However, 2 weeks earlier, another Tlingit had been accidentally killed, and the customary payment was not made. The Indians let the matter go, but now this was a medicine man, and a nobleman at that. Tlingit law must be honored. The Indians took possession of 2 launches until such time as payment was made, and also to ensure the equipment associated with the death was not used again until after the mourning period. Tichlane's death required sizable restitution payment. 200 blankets were demanded. The highest-ranking American official in the territory of Alaska was at Sitka, Naval Commander E.C. Merriman. He had already decided that no longer would the tribal law of the Tlinkits be respected by American forces. It was time, he decided, that the Tlinkits acknowledge American supremacy and authority. And so, to make his point, Merriman sailed to Angoon with a fully armed U.S. Revenue Service cutter and a large civilian tugboat he'd armed with cannon and Gatling gun. For punishment, Merriman made his own demand. The Indians must pay him 400 blankets, or he would destroy their village with cannon fire. Merriman ordered the Indians' canoes destroyed to show he meant business. The Tlinkits could produce only 81 blankets by the next day, and Merriman launched his attack. First, the nearby storehouses filled with food for winter were shelled and burned. Next, volley after volley of cannon fire struck the great communal clan houses, each with a history reaching back into time and legend, until, one at a time, they fell into rubble. Next, Marines and sailors poured through the ruins, looting and destroying priceless works of art inherited through generations, all adorned with emblems of the clans, symbols of the Tlinkits' greatest treasure, their clan identity. That winter, devoid of adequate shelter, their vital canoes, weapons, and food stores all gone, the Tlinkits wandered the beaches, scraping together what food they could, such as clams, gumboots, and crab. It is not known how many died that winter of starvation and exposure. It took 5 years to rebuild the village. To this date, there has never been an official investigation of the incident by the government.
While the artifacts and traditional treasures which were destroyed the day of the attack 100 years ago can never be replaced, all residents of Angoon, by the courage you have shown over the past century in recovering from that attack, have created a new history for the citizens of this village, and one of which all Alaskans can be exceedingly proud. We can only hope that in 1982, all Alaskans have learned from the past mistakes, and that never again will we permit our people to become so separated into warring factions because of mistrust and misunderstanding. The bombardment of this village 100 years ago is the ultimate example of a tragedy which can strike when people no longer listen. Let's learn from our past mistakes. Our future as a wise and just people can survive with nothing less. Thank you.
These are the representatives of the households of the Peshitan clan. 100 years ago, October 24th, a shell hit our shaman Titlain. For 100 years, we have kept it in our hearts and minds. Why wait 100 years, asks someone. For the first time, we are going to say it. For the first time in 100 years, we are going to say, we have reservations to what extent it was an accident. We have reservations to what extent the shelling of each household was an accident. For 100 years, we had locked this up in our hearts, silently cried and moaned the death of 6 children.
As you might suspect, this is not a traditional Tlingit ceremonial hat. This hat has a different meaning. According to tradition, it is held and displayed as a symbol of a debt unpaid, the debt of respect, the lack of respect the Navy showed for the Tlingit's traditions 100 years ago, and the lack of respect today. Representatives of Angoon have met with the U.S. Navy and requested an official apology for the bombardment, but to date, there has been none. The Tlinkits of Angoon symbolically allow the Navy the opportunity to respond. For 2 minutes, all remain silent, waiting. Of the 6 children that died in the bombardment, 3 were from the Killer Whale clan. For Jimmy George, cultural leader of today's Killer Whale people, those deaths symbolize his ancestors' suffering. Here, Mr. George is presented with a replica of the Killer Whale pole that once stood at Angoon. In this way, Angoon recognizes those killer whales who died. Thank you for accepting this replica. Someday we will build a totem pole in front of your clan house. Thank you. Jimmy George's parents lived through the bombardment, and he remembers the stories they told him about that day and the suffering that followed. The totem image of the killer whale recalls his loved ones and their suffering. Several years ago, Tom Jackson inherited the clan name of Jimmy George's uncle. Today, he fulfills a Tlingit uncle's obligation to provide strength and support. When a boat is destroyed or ruined and cannot be used any longer, then it is put on the beach. When the others say, "Where is your boat?" he says, "It is put ashore. It cannot be used. My children, my children, this is the way I am. I am thanking you for the honor and the strength you are giving me. For now I am still with you, but my time is limited." Here you have brought him among you, honoring him. Thank you. I will not speak lengthily. He is the last among us. If he should have troubles, if his oars should break, I will always depend on you for comfort and strength. Angoon is a raven village of the Deshitan clan. As such, they acted as hosts for a potlatch, or ceremonial feast. Traditional Tlingit foods like salmon and venison are in abundance. But most prized are the delicacies such as herring roe and seal oil. But more than eating and socializing, potlatches are ceremonial affairs. A leader of the Eagles from the village of Cake is ceremonially placing this raven hat upon a raven leader from Klawak. Thus, members of the opposite side always perform ceremonial courtesies for each other, and according to custom, the presence of such visiting dignitaries from other villages lends importance to this commemoration. The dog salmon hat they are holding was made shortly after the bombardment to replace a masterpiece destroyed by the Navy.
We were hesitant to bring this hat out, but now on this occasion we felt it appropriate that this hat should be brought forward, that you might see it.
Some pieces of Tlingit art have great reputations, and their display in itself adds importance to a ceremony. This priceless dog salmon hat is almost 100 years old. Two houses of the dog salmon clan stand in Angoon today. Here, a clan member of appropriate rank performs a dance in honor of the dog salmon spirit. The person is hidden behind the blanket because it is the animal spirit that is dancing. According to Tlingit mythology, in the ancient past, each clan formed a special relationship with the animal spirit for which it is named. Today, as in old, many Tlinkits still feel a special bond with certain animals, their clan symbols. And just as important, they feel a bond to other people from any community who have the same crest.
Being very frank, I can remember just a few years ago when people would look to Angoon and say, that community hasn't progressed as much as some of the other communities in southeastern Alaska. It doesn't have the roads, it doesn't have the new buildings. But as a matter of fact, what was happening in Angoon would serve to strengthen all of us in the other communities who at that point were making more material advances. Because what was happening in Angoon was a people husbanding its strength, a people protecting its culture, a people saying to the outside world, we will develop at our own pace. There are things that we hold dear and that we cherish and that we treasure that you may not understand. And during these 3 days, as you celebrate, what you are doing is commemorating, memorializing, and serving notice that this is a people that will never be beaten, that this is a people that will never succumb, a people who may be shelled, a people who may have their homes destroyed, a people who may have at a moment in time their livelihood destroyed, but a people who in spirit will never ever die.
Today, in living proof of that spirit, Angoon is dedicating 3 totem poles. Someday there will be more, all replicas of poles that once stood here.
Sorry, one moment.
Yeah, there's even going to be rebels in when Christ takes over.
Okay, here we go. One sec.
I can hear you.
Okay, here we go.
Totem poles are carved and erected for ceremonial purposes like this 100-year commemoration. Traditionally, they are commissioned by leaders to commemorate a relative, an historic event, or to display inherited clan emblems. Here, they are dedicating commemorative poles in honor of clan members who suffered and died because of the bombardment. Totem poles are the embodiment of the clan's history, its cultural identity, and a source of pride to its members.
There's a culture, and it's alive, and shouldn't be forgotten. I did all this whole work, and this project was a lot of work. I've never worked so hard at anything in my life, and I did it all for the young people. When they go on their way to school, you know, in the morning, and they're half awake, they can look up and say, well, that represents me, you know, that's me up there.
And who will these children be? What will they believe in? Will it be the human values of their centuries-old culture, and will these give them a sense of identity and belonging in the world? Will they grow up believing and practicing the ideals of freedom, fairness, and generosity that Americans are so proud of? These are all hopes that the people of Angoon have for their young ones, children who hopefully will never know the pain born of ignorance and prejudice. This commemoration ceremony has done much to heal the wound, to reconcile the suffering of those now gone, the hurt of those who remember their story, the wounded pride of these proud people. But the wound is not fully healed. It cannot be, not until the United States Navy responds with the one gesture so important to these people, to any civilized people, an apology for a wrong committed. Once upon a time, America was a young nation eager to expand its frontiers, tame the wilderness, and harness its wealth. But in the overconfidence and exuberance of youth, mistakes are made. Today, America is a more mature nation. Is it not a sign of maturity to admit one's mistakes? Is it not a sign of true greatness for the mighty to acknowledge the small?
Thank you, Shirley, for telling us about this video.
Yeah.
We have 2 minutes left. Did you have any closing comments?
The only the thing that is there's an apology, and I thought they were waiting for October 26th, but I'm not sure now because I can't reach anybody in Juneau to find out. But there was an apology for a similar incident to cake. I think that's already passed. So Angoon's been waiting for quite a while to hear this. So it's going to be a lot of people going for that. So I don't think we have time for comments, but I hope you'll be thinking about it, and that you learn something about the culture, which is really important, and how it works. That Eshitan, the main tribe, the main clan from Angoon, really worked hard on this, but they also included the Eagle clan, the Killerwell clan from there. So everybody had a chance to participate. Thank you. Comments will be welcome. We'll talk about it on Thursday. Get together again on Thursday.
Okay.
Ganas cheese.
Oh.
Ganas cheese.
Oh.
Ganesh Cheesh.